cultural roots of this? Why women of color, Black women in particular, African American women, are less likely to breastfeed?
I think that, well, I don't know about breastfeed. I want to say overall, there's a, when we speak history, it's like there's history and then there's history.
Yeah.
And I think that until we really recognize the way in which this country has been incentivized to maintain degraded health amongst Black women, we're not going to really get to the really core issues that shift the way that we think. So I often wonder, like, if we, we're grown people in this country, we've been through decades of our lives, and we look and we say, okay, here are all these disparities. At some point you have to say, either these disparities exist because these folks are inferior. It just keeps persisting. It's decade after decade after decade after decade. So either they exist because the people themselves are inferior and are keeping themselves in this pattern, or there is something that is keeping them in these systems and this degraded place, right? And if you don't address like the question of like, well, then what is happening? You are left with, I just take it for granted, right? And under I take it for granted is somehow that the people themselves are responsible for it. And I think that we don't say that out loud, but we hold that fundamental belief in this country that everybody's responsible for themselves, that the society has nothing to do.
It's part of the healthcare debate right now.
Exactly, right? That society has nothing to do with it. And I think that overall, one of my challenges overall with the ways in which we approach it is we talk about fixing the system, and I think that the system is not broken. I think that the system is working the way that it was intended, the way that it was designed, the way that it was constructed from the beginning of the history of this country. And if we don't begin to unpack that, then the spiritual, fundamental spiritual health and cultural health of the country is what's most in jeopardy, what is most failing, is that we have a fundamental belief system that exists in this country that allows for the continued degradation of certain peoples. And we are not only are we not incentivized as a country, as a nation to address that, this country and nation has been incentivized to actually keep it in place. And if we don't acknowledge that somewhere, as at some piece of our starting point, then we keep treating things as if they're somewhat neutral, that we then have to like move from this neutral place in which people somehow got in poverty. And we should fix it. We should help them fix it.
Like it happened like the weather.
Like it just happened, yeah, right? And just like that over hundreds of years, somehow these people have managed to stay in poverty and stay in these situations. And if we keep approaching it as if it just happened in the last 10 years, 40 years, 50 years, even 100 years, then we're not really addressing the truth of the problem.
So is this, in some ways, when we talk about health disparities, is that a tributary of Black Lives Matter?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because what we're saying in what I think is being articulated in Black Lives Matter, of course, is that in fact Black lives do not matter. They have not mattered. They have not historically mattered. And there's both an assertion of that, and that assertion of Black Lives Matter is a way in which for us to be confronted with the truth that has not been so historically in this country. It remains the truth. Clearly, it's not absolutely everything, but like any challenge, if you don't go to the root of the problem, you keep fooling around with the symptoms, right? And so we can have a war on poverty, but if we don't have a war on white supremacy, then we are not going to address the problem.